Beatitudes, Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, on behalf of the Community of Sant'Egidio, I have the pleasure to welcome you to the opening of this international peace meeting in Tirana with the challenging title, Peace is Always Possible. Përshëndes nga zemrat të gjithë shqiptarët që me interes dhe simpati ndihmojnë të realizojnë punën e komunitetit Sant'Egidio për njerëzit në nevojë dhe për paqe.
I want to greet all the Albanians who have helped us in organizing the work together with Sant'Egidio to work for the poor and to promote peace in the world.
Almost 30 years, men and women of different religions have gathered in the spirit of Assisi in a particular city in order to meet one another, to dialogue, to face together the challenges of our time and to find ways of peacefully living together, both locally and globally. The title, Peace is Always Possible, is the affirmation of the intuition of Assisi, lived by a growing participation of religious and political leaders, but it also refers with realism to the difficult time that we face, in which peace is still possible, even when we hear and see around us strong signs of resignation and even pessimism. Our today's world needs renewal and refreshing of the old dream of peace and living together. Rivolgo un benvenuto affettuoso.
And I want to give a warm welcome to all of the friends of the Community of Sant'Egidio who have traveled in more than 2,000 from Italy and from a number of European countries. They have come here to live this moment of friendship in a difficult time, but also to help in making this meeting possible. To Sant'Egidio, Albania isn't just another country. A long friendship which began in the early 90s bounds us to you. And many Italian and European volunteers crossed the seas of indifference to help the refugees from Kosovo and to faithfully help in the social and democratic growth of the country. Between Sant'Egidio and Albania, there is a strong friendship which today acquires a new value. We are glad to write a new stage in the dialogue between religions in this very country.
Introduce you during this opening session the prestigious panel of speakers I warmly welcome here. First, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Blendi Klosi, Minister of Welfare and Youth of Albania and Chairman of the Interministerial Committee for the organization of this meeting. Thank you for your generous cooperation. And in this occasion, I want to extend also our thanks to the European Union, which made possible the full realization of this meeting. The floor, please, is yours.
My dear friends, welcome to the heart of our peaceful religious coexistence over the years. Welcome to the country of harmony between faiths and religious communities. Welcome to the country which hosts over 650,000 mosques, 600,000 teche, and over 700,000 churches. Welcome to the country of Skanderberg, Mother Teresa. Welcome to the country of the wonders. Welcome to the country in which things which bring war elsewhere become an element of peace here. In Albania, people have always shared joy and pain with the same faith and with the same need for one another. In Albania, the priest and the imam have struggled together for the Albanian school, for the creation of the Albanian state. And together, they shared the cell in the prison of dictatorship. They were deprived from their right to believe in religion and in the Lord. Welcome to Albania, a country in which in the church and the mosque of St. Stephen's, which was built in Scutari in the 13th century, during the week, the Muslims would pray in the mosque, and on Sunday they would leave the temple for Sunday Mass to the Christians and to the Catholics. This is no invention. This is a metaphor of a religious coexistence between religious faiths, between people and cultures. This is Albania, dear friends. This is the country of 2,400 cultural heritages. The country of eagles, the country of the Besa, the country of the promise, of the word given, which is difficult to translate since it is so deeply linked to the culture of our country. Over the centuries, we have come to believe that the Besa, the word we give, is something which is stronger than the rifle, stronger than weapons. A promise, when giving one's word, is something which allowed us to save thousands of Jewish lives during World War II in Albania. And today we believe that dialogue and words can always make peace possible. President, dear Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, clerics and politicians from all over the world, dear friends and volunteers, freedom of religion is one of the essential rights of human beings, and we have to guarantee this to all citizens. This has an even greater importance in this day and age, in a time in which so many people worldwide are denied the right to their faith and are prosecuted for it. Nowadays, in an era in which cultural and historical diversity is threatened in the name of religion, in this world filled with conflict, the peace and harmony we experience reminds us of a healthy person, and only a sick person can understand how important and how valuable health is. We are proud to greet you in our city today, and in just 2 years' time, we granted the permission to build a great mosque for the Muslims. We inaugurated the Orthodox church with the participation of patriarchs from all over the world. And together, Christians and Muslims, we greeted Pope Francis in Tirana. And we also financed the Odium Betekta, which we will be inaugurating tomorrow during this Day of Peace, as a value, not only for the Albanian Bektashi, but also as a reference for a Bektashi all over the world. Dear friends, it is a huge honor for me to greet you initially today. And we will be spending time together until September the 8th, so that we can say together that peace is always possible. And on behalf of the Albanian government, I truly wish to thank the Community of Sant'Egidio, which, in the spirit of Assisi, has decided to organize the 28th meeting for peace here in Tirana, in Albania. While we still remember the historic visit of Pope Francis just 1 year ago. In conclusion, dear friends, allow me to quote Mother Teresa, who used to say that peace begins with a smile. And I'll continue by quoting Muhammad. A smile will be counted as an act of charity. And therefore, allow me to wish you all the best in the capital of religious harmony and peace. A model, a country which Pope Francis described as a city filled with religious brotherhood. Thank you.
We will listen now to the words of Mr. Filip Vujanovic, the President of Montenegro, that is an old friend of our meetings for dialogue and peace. Please, Mr. President.
Distinguished Professor Riccardi, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, respecting noble mission of the Community of Sant'Egidio that has been organizing the international meetings for peace since 1986, it is with great pleasure that I express my deepest belief in strong ambition of these meetings to contribute to the affirmation of peace and overcoming disputes and conflicts through the dialogue among religions, people and countries. I am glad that this year's meeting is taking place in Tirana, the capital of Albania, our neighboring country that we have deep historical and friendly ties, and with which we not only share common border and centuries-long experiences, but also commitment to the prosperity. Wars and armed conflicts have been a constant in the history of the world. So until 20th century, war was perceived as a normal state of mankind, while peace was only a break between the two wars. After tragic experiences of the First and Second World Wars, terrible crimes, huge loss of lives and material destruction, a need for peace in the world has become prevailing. In affirmation of peace, special value is attributed to all religions. Religions insist on peace, asking for peace to be first established within oneself and then among people, so that it can be ensured in the society in general. In his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus Christ said that peacemakers were blessed, as they would be called children of God. Judaism promotes that parts of understanding are parts of peace. Respecting a human being and peace in which he would live, Prophet Muhammad said in his farewell Hajj that man was a God's creation, and might anyone who destroyed it be doomed. Therefore, endangering peace, terrorism, and war are brutal abuse of essential religious messages, and only peace means respecting true religious values. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in Balkans have special commitment to ensure stability and peace, as the people in the Balkans have been well acquainted with the atrocities of the war. The First World War that started in the Balkans had been preceded by two Balkan wars, while the Second World War took place in the entire Balkan region. The 20th centuries was ended by wars that marked disintegration of former Yugoslavia. Therefore, the Balkan is obliged to foster and affirm peace and its everlasting value. Integrations and economic development are surely paths toward permanent ensuring and stability and peace in the Balkans. Integrations mean unity of nations and countries, putting the value of the borders in the less relevant context, while enabling all nations to live a shared integration framework. This is of special importance for Western Balkans because it is just due to the borders that the breakup of the former Yugoslavia through war and devastation was caused. Due to the ambition to change borders of the former Yugoslav republics so that so-called great nations could be given great states. There is not risk of the conflict among states that are joined in the integrations, and peace becomes a lasting value that contacts them. From this reason, European and NATO integrations provide a framework that ensures peace. Montenegro has been committed to integrations, and this year it expects to be invited to NATO, which is the best guarantee of peace, and our membership in it will contribute to the stability of the Balkan region. Economic development of Balkans ensures better connections among states, easier communications among citizens, and better economic cooperation. At the same time, it allows better use of resources that should ensure economic development and better standard of living of the citizens. Therefore, we are glad that the European Union has decided to support economic development of the region through the Bruni process and Berlin process. In this way, it is also supports stability of the region and speed-ups of European integration process. Ladies and gentlemen, Montenegro sees its future in the affirmation of the values of peace and development, believing in dialogue among religions, nations, and faiths, and being confident that cooperation is a basic for peace and development. Thank you for your attention.
I am very glad to announce the message that His Holiness Pope Francis addressed to our encounter. It will be read by Monsignor Matteo Zuppi, Auxiliary Bishop of Rome.
Illustri rappresentanti delle chiese e comunità cristiane e delle grandi religioni del mondo.
Representatives of the Christian churches and communities and of the great world religions. I offer you all my most respectful greetings, and I express my spiritual closeness to the International Meeting for Peace promoted by the Community of Sant'Egidio in Tirana. These meetings follow one another in the path marked by St. John Paul II with the first historical meeting of Assisi in October 1986. Since then, a pilgrimage has developed of men and women of different religions who year after year stop in various cities of the world. While the scenarios of history change and peoples are called to face profound and at times dramatic transformations, it is increasingly necessary that the followers of different religions meet with each other in dialogue, walking together and collaborating for peace. In the very spirit of Assisi that recalls the luminous testimony of St. Francis. This year you have chosen to stop in Tirana, the capital of a country that has become a symbol of peaceful coexistence among different religions after a long history of sufferance. It is a choice I agree with, as I demonstrated with my visit to Tirana in September last year. I chose Albania as the first European country to visit in order to encourage the path of peaceful coexistence after the tragic persecutions experienced by Albanian believers in the past century. The long list of martyrs still brings back memories of that dark time, but it also reminds us of the power of faith, which is unbent by the arrogance of evil. In no other country in the world was the choice to reject God from the life of the people so persistent. A religious sign was enough to be punished with prison or even death. This saddest of primacies profoundly marked the Albanian people until the time when freedom was restored, when members of the various religious communities, tested by their shared suffering, found themselves living together in peace. For this reason, dear friends, I am particularly grateful to you for choosing Albania. Today, I wish to reaffirm with you what I said last year in Tirana. A peaceful and fruitful coexistence between persons and communities of believers of different religions is not only desirable, but possible and realistic. This is the spirit of Assisi, to live together in peace, remembering that peace and coexistence have a spiritual foundation, a religious foundation. Prayer is always at the root of peace.
Because its foundation lies in God, peace is always possible, as the title of your meeting this year states. It is necessary to reaffirm this truth, especially today, while in some parts of the world, violence, persecutions, and abuse of religious freedom seem to prevail, together with resignation in front of conflicts that drag themselves on. We must never be resigned to war, and we must not be indifferent in front of people who suffer from war and violence. For this reason I chose as the theme of the next World Day of Peace, Overcome Indifference and Conquer Peace. It is violence also to raise walls and barriers, to stop those who seek havens of peace. It is violence to reject It is violence to reject those who flee from inhumane conditions with hope of a better future. It is violence to discard children and elderly people from society and from life itself. It is violence to widen the gap between people who waste what is superfluous and people who lack what is necessary. In this world of ours, faith in God makes us believe and cry out that peace is possible. As believers, we are called to rediscover the universal vocation of peace that lies in the heart of our respective religious traditions, and offer it afresh, bravely, to the men and women of our times. And I reaffirm what I said in this regard in Tirana. Again, speaking to the religious leaders, authentic religion is a source of peace and not of violence. No one must use the name of God to commit violence. To kill in the name of God is a grave sacrilege. To discriminate in the name of God is inhuman. Dear friends, to state that peace is always possible is not naivety. It rather expresses our faith that nothing is impossible to God. Of course, we are required to be involved personally and through our communities in the great work of peace. May this land of Albania, land of martyrs, be the origin of a new prophecy of peace. I join you all, so that in the variety of our religious traditions, we can continue and live a shared passion for the growth of peaceful coexistence among all the peoples of the earth. From the Vatican of the 29th of August 2015, memory of the martyrdom of St. John the Baptist, Pope Francis.
Now I am happy to give the floor to Mr. Edi Rama, Prime Minister of the Republic of Albania. In these days, we see the traces of your work as the former mayor of Tirana. By giving color to the dark buildings, you gave the capital a new soul. We thank you and your office for the appreciated help in realizing this Congress.
Nderuar miq, kaq të posaçëm,
dear guests, illustrious representatives, welcome to Albania, a country in which Pope Francis called the country of brotherhood. Without going into the official names and titles as a way of saving time, since the list, the protocol would require a great deal of time, I do wish to assure you of the fact that you have my utmost respect and esteem, not only due to what you represent institutionally, but also due to the very special spiritual lesson you offer in the difficult times we live in. This is a medicine, a cure, treatment for hundreds of thousands of millions of believers and people of goodwill. I am also convinced of the fact that no one will be offended if I greet especially a pastor of souls who comes to Albania for the very first time. Someone who, with his presence, makes the resistance to the martyrdom of the Iraqi people and Christians in that country so much more tangible. For his great moral strength and for the memory he transmits. Given the bond of brotherhood which exists between religions in Iraq, I want to greet the Patriarch of Babylon and the Chaldeans especially. Thank you and welcome to Tirana. Whether or not a plant can bear its fruits can only be seen when the fruits are born. That's what Matthew says. And for the past 30 years, this tree, this plant, which was planted in Assisi by the world leaders of religions around the unforgettable John Paul II, in the spirit of a prayer for peace, has now taken root in hope. In a world in which an increasingly growing gray, which is a source of concern, seems to be suffocating all of their colors. And just like the theologians refer to an economy of services and the vortex of human history, I think it's safe to say that this initiative, which has existed for so long, has become a real ecology for the spirit of reason and for the life of culture. Struck by all winds, from the opposing winds of the history of the last 2 decades, the plant, the tree which was planted in that fertile land that St. Francis showed upon, along with his grace, has now become a milestone, so that together we can continue, despite the efforts and the challenges, despite the barbarity, despite the non-reason of barbarity, we can continue in our effort to promote coexistence, in which we have the example of strength, and not, or the strength of example rather, than the example of strength, so that we can continue to foster reason, and that's one of the reasons that we are here today. The initiative promoted by the Community of Sant'Egidio has a very specific trait, which makes this moment of prayer for peace in Tirana an event which is the epitome of our joy, the joy for being able to host this prayer for peace in Albania, something which needs to be meditated upon by all of us, with the ability to bring together believers in a number of different religions, united by the awareness of being pilgrims in the path towards living in dignity, peace, and reason. The volunteers, the creators, the pastors of this great community are always the incarnation of a vision but also of a method. The vision of an always possible peace for each person, a realistic or pragmatic person who sees politics or the economy as the last chapter in each story, appears to be slightly ridiculous to me, maybe even cynical. For over 30 years now, along with your thoughts, you have been promoting political and social research as a way of achieving peace. And you transform this thought into something which takes shape and which brings about this path and this event. The prayer for peace is different from any other event promoted by people of goodwill and by a number of organizations or by civil society. The fact that we never underscore the need for a new social order based on new foundations which aren't simply geopolitical or financial, despite being considered to be very healthy indeed. The proposal you make through this incessant dialogue, and here in Albania, I remember the lengthy negotiations which happened thanks to the Community of Sant'Egidio, and very difficult times for us following the collapse of the communist regime. I believe that your effort is one to promote an ethical order, an all-encompassing one, an order accepted by all. It's a vision, but it is also a method, one which echoes and underscores the urgency, the need we all face, one which was defined so well by the quote by Patriarch Bartholomew, who expresses his view by saying that the answer to the major problems humanity has to face cannot only be an economic response. It would be empty without the ethical and spiritual side of things. These words are a part of his message. In Avenir de la Terre in Paris in 2009, and the echo of which is felt even more strongly today when facing the pain, the suffering, the barbarity, which is becoming more and more common, events which are also linked to our daily lives. And from this point of view, seeing so many people gathered here today, so many leaders, so many representatives of so many religions, isn't simply the legitimization of relativism. The history of this country testifies to the fact that together, opinions, religions, faiths, and personal choices are not the same. They aren't equivalent. But they are not the reason to see obstacles, rather than seeing paths of possible communication. The mistakes or injustice can never be worth the same as the good or truth. And the history of Albania, which was summarized so well in Pope Francis's message, in which the persecution of faiths and religion, the exclusion of God from the right to be present as an aspiration in this world, caused bloodshed in our country, taking away the lives of so many innocent people. And their only sin was that of believing in God. And by doing so, a number of living testimonies were devastated. temples of a number of different religions were devastated. And nonetheless, that vision was not able to triumph over the good and the truth, which is at the foundation of each faith, of each way of promoting the goodwill and the faith in God. And that's why we are here in this country, in this venue, in this conference hall, which was conceived to promote the propaganda of an atheist regime, and which today brings together all of you. The expression of the fact that peace isn't simply possible. It is actually the only possibility that the future has to offer. If peace and reconciliation and love don't stem from an individual and collective prayer, all of the mouths speaking religion will be deaf words in the minds of people. And that's why I believe that the holy words of the Quran, according to which we have to bow down along with those who bow down, is the most significant urge that we can all offer to each other through common prayer. And that's why I am so enthusiastic of the fact that this event is an outstretched hand to the sky, which began from that tree which was planted so many years ago in Assisi. A tree which is growing and bringing its shadow to this land, the land of Albanians. It isn't simply a plea for syncretism. It isn't simply a prayer that can include everybody. It isn't a catalyst for an exclusive belonging to a single religion. It is a plea, an urge to meet each other, to get to know each other through dialogue with each other, so that this event, beyond the people meeting here, can convey the path of the meeting as a message for all those who love peace, for all those who would never find it, were they not to search for it, together with those they are waging war against. And finally, allow me to conclude my message by wishing you all the best and the utmost success in this stay of yours together in Tirana. With the belief, with the trust that just like the history of this small country has shown us, God and the faith in God, prayer to God, regardless of the way in which we pray, despite the fact that there may be forces that can oppose this, even for a relatively long amount of time, well, there is no force that can oppose people who strive for peace. Peace can always be possible through the example of Peter, who in his letters writes that we can always be willing to promote love and mutual understanding. Thank you very much indeed.
E adesso ascoltiamo volentieri le parole del professore Andrea Riccardi, fondatore della Comunità di Sant'Egidio. È stato uno dei primi occidentali a venire in Albania. ha aiutato a scrivere la Costituzione, particolarmente il paragrafo sulla libertà religiosa in questo Paese, che era il primo Stato ateo del mondo. Ha aiutato tanti.
He helped so many to love this country, and we want to thank him for having taught us to love the outskirts of the world. We want to thank him for his commitment to peace. You have the floor.
Thank you. Presidents of the Republic, Beatitudes, distinguished religious leaders, very dear friends of mine, and you who worked and strived to organize this meeting. I'm very happy that this international meeting takes place in Tirana, and I thank the President, the Prime Minister, the Albanian authorities, and I recall to what extent this meeting, while Albanian religious denominations strive for this meeting to take place with determination, this is one of the reasons we are here. Albania, as it was said, I just want to restate, is a plural nation on a religious point of view. Sunni Muslims, Orthodox Christians, Roman Catholics, Bektashi do live together here. It is the historical legacy of Albania. They are not just a remnant of the past, as living together among different people is actually a reality for many societies around the world. Is the everyday condition. There are no homogeneous societies without the other. No society is an island. Living together among different people creates problems, of course, but yet it is an advantaged human situation that fosters daily dialogue. This is Albania, land of living together. However, this nation, as it was recalled by Prime Minister Rama, this nation was deeply wounded. In the obscure years following World War II, this was the land of the achieved communism, fulfilled communism. All liberties, specificities, diversities were banned. Religion, too, was banned, to the extent that in 1967, Albania was declared the first atheist nation of the world. Completely atheist. Any religious act, all religious acts were prohibited, even more heavily punished. In those years, freedom, consciousness, faith, discussion originated the martyrdom of many, because Albania, as Pope Francis said, is a land of martyrs. It's not by chance that the Mufti Mustafa Varoshi and the Roman Catholic Archbishop Prendushi ended up in the same prison and in the same graveyard in Durrës. According to Amnesty International, still in 1991, 31 concentration camps were operational in Albania. A beloved friend of mine, survivor to the Albanian Gulag, Giovannin Zezai, told me they carried back a prisoner with signs of harsh torture. He could not stand, and I heard him whisper, "This is hell." Albania was sealed. The border was sealed, but they had sealed also the space of heaven and of the consciousness of people, as Albanians suffered. They suffered so much in more than 40 years. This may appear to be a very old story. I myself got to know that world in the 80s. It was a grey, closed, sad, violent world. And when today we think back, it looks unthinkable, impossible, that such a life system was in place, comparable to a nightmare of history. It actually occurred. In those same 80s, the regime appeared to show no signs of change or avenues of freedom robust. were poised to last for a long time. Instead, everything changed in a sudden. I remember the enthusiastic days of the conquering of freedom. Dear friends, as we may acknowledge, history is full of surprises. Maybe after sealed, blocked, obscure times, history is full of surprises, and this is a lesson of hope also for today, in times of resignation vis-à-vis very unbearable and unhuman situations. We wanted to have this meeting in Albania in the spirit of Assisi, gathering various religions, humanists, people in search. For this is a land of living together in peace among different people. This land has a legacy of martyrdom and quests for freedom, but also, as Hilde Kibum said, the Community of Sant'Egidio since decades has been close to Albania, has shown sympathy, and has a strong relationship with its people. We believe there is a strong need for the spirit of Assisi today. The spirit that stemmed from the impressive 1986 meeting in times of Cold War among leaders of major world religions by John Paul II. I quote, "Not any more one against the other, but one together with the other," unquote. Religions together are a strong factor of peace, a school of dialogue, of certain dialogue, but the spirit precedes religions. It questions them through history. The spirit questions religions through the quests for peace and the cry originated by war and historical divide. Religions are challenged to listen together, and at the same time the pleas and the hopes, not only those of the fellow religious of each religion, but of the whole world and of those who suffer. Today religions have a strong need for the spirit of Assisi. They have been religions and can still be, as we know, instrument of divide, contraposition, instrumentalized for conflict. But the spirit of Assisi is a disconnect from the warmongering instrumentalization of religions as a new discovery of peace, as a message which comes from the depth of the various religious traditions. In this very spirit, we have walked during the past 30 years, taking landmark steps every year and giving rise to effective pathways of peace. But today, we are concerned by the widespread attitude to give up, to accept undergoing a path of violence, of terrorism, of war, as something which is unstoppable. Unstoppable trends, as if peace were a lost utopia of the past century. One example suffices: Syria. Since more than 4 years, Syria dies every day under the blows of a terrible and horrible war, which has now lasted longer than World War I. In that country, among the millions enduring sufferance, we want to remember all, but, dear friends, I have to remember a few dear friends lost, disappeared in nowhere, as the Syrians, bishops of Aleppo, Mar Gregorios Ibrahim and Bulos Yazigi, and Paolo Dall'Olio, Italian. To us, these men are the symbol, the sign of a country, a people lost in the horror of war and violence. Peace seems impossible for Syria, and giving up achieving peace equates to condemning to death that country. And international community has failed blatantly and sadly failed. However, I question myself, is there any way a movement for peace in Syria? Where? In the Arab countries? Where in Europe? Where in the Mediterranean? Where a movement for peace in Syria? Passion for peace seemed to have worn out. Yet, in 2003 we witnessed a strong movement for peace against war in Iraq, a sister country of Syria. Today, no concern, no protest, no invocation for peace. But a shared hope for peace, faced to the failure of politicians, is in any case a resource. Building peace is indeed a difficult, slow, realistic endeavor, but at the same time it is a dream, because without a dream of peace there is no peace. No peace is built. Without a dream for peace, can we, dear friends, accept this sad resignation vis-à-vis war? Perhaps we may ring-fence ourselves in our small, free zones of peace? But war is besieging us, at least through the refugees as those who reach Europe, without knowing where to go, with no hope to go back to live in their countries. Just to make a case in point, Syrians land in Europe, but only a restored peace in Syria and in Iraq will make them stay in their land, in their motherland. These refugees, war or environmental refugees, leave their homelands, but who has the right to stop them doing so? I question. Peace for us only, without attempting to achieve peace for our brother, not only is unjust, but also impossible. We are not just dreamers to say this. Notwithstanding, dreams can be powerful, but we say this as people, and I speak of us as Sant'Egidio who work as peacemakers in practical ways, and I thank Prime Minister Rama for having spoken about our work for reconciliation and peace in Albania, but also in many even more difficult situations with results, sometimes good results, sometimes limited results, but always we had faith that peace is possible. It always has to be possible, because if peace is not possible, it will not be possible to have a dignified life, a decent life. This is why, dear friends, we face the following question: is the peace possible? This question sounds as a protest against war and resignation all around. The act of protesting is not useless, because the consolidation of resignation, of giving up, is the enabling environment of violence and its cultural rehabilitation. I add, the attractiveness of violence and terrorism is growing. It is the case of the foreign fighters who leave our European and Mediterranean countries to go and fight beside the terrorists. Is peace possible? This is a challenge to believers and to all people. Peace is enshrined in religious traditions, is the aim of prayer, is considered by many as the very name of God. Shouldn't the religion open a stronger and broader discussion about peace? The very religions risk to give up and accept war and violence as unavoidable facts. But this occurs when they ring-fence their faith, when they isolate themselves with their faithful without looking in the eyes of the other. No religion is an island in Albania and in all our nations, because peace begins by staying with the other, educating to peace the young generation. Peace consolidates when people unmask violence, when people dissociate from violence, when delegitimize violence, unmasking its threat and taking away any idea of value of violence. War, terrorism, steal models, words to religions, and they end up justifying these human acts through the name of God and or with religious values. So we have to free up something more in the world of religions, and vis-à-vis the quest for peace of many peoples, of refugees, and face to the theologies of violence. Something must be freed up. the self-centeredness of the believers is the death of the spirit, is. And religions have to express the rebellion of moral awareness against violence and evil. Violence kills humankind, but also destroys its humanity and its soul. Old and ancient religious traditions cannot be kidnapped in the orgy of a globalized violence. This is why they have to be unlocked, unleashed, and they are unlocking and unleashing for peace. Dear friends, you may see that peoples in many European countries, they unlocked themselves, they started going to meet the refugees, notwithstanding walls, notwithstanding populistic protests and barriers. They freed themselves from the blockade of fear, and they went and met the refugees, as we witnessed the last days. As people used to say, Europeans fear invasion. Instead, they made steps of sympathy towards people they didn't even know. Religion, in its Latin etymology, means linkage, never without the other, as Michel de Certeau used to say. Religion is the link with the other. It is in the very nature of the woman and the religion, women and men, to dialogue, to meet, to speak among different families of believers. We have to speak with the humanists, the secular people, and the best secular thinking goes hand in hand with the religious thinking when it is about the value of life and peace. We have to face reality in its woes and suffering. Religious nurture, always nurture in conflict, during conflict, the hope of a possible peace. They can mark the revolution of the spirit against one thinking, one only thinking, pensée unique, which accepts war. Our century needs peaceful women and men capable of revolting themselves for peace and standing up for peace. The great wise people of the Spirit always taught us that when the synagogue is set to fire, first of all, they will set to fire the church, the mosque, and then following democracy and eventually culture and freedom. So never destroy the temple of the other. Do not destroy the temple of the other. In 1938, in the Night of Crystals, the parish priest of the Cathedral Lichtenberg of Berlin said, the synagogue is set on fire. It is the house of God, however. So never say it's not my problem, it's not my business. I don't care. We are all linked. We are all different. We are all the same. We are worried about the Christians. We are very concerned for the Christians and the Yazidi of the Middle East, who are compelled to abandon their historical homelands. And this fact, I would like to express my sympathy to Patriarch Sacco. I want to greet him and tell him that we are all together. Everything binds us to them, and we will never forget the tragedy of people who are compelled to flee their homeland under the pressure of violence. We will never forget. This year began with the terrorist acts in Paris, January 2015. Self-declared Muslims killed other Muslims, non-Muslims, Jews. I was very much struck, and I would like to end with this quote as a lesson, as a life lesson, the words of a simple man, an African immigrant, Lassana Batili, a Muslim who used to go to the mosque and who saved several Jews from the terroristic attack to the kosher supermarket in Paris, and they asked him, "Why did you risk your life?" And he said, "Yes, I helped them. I helped the Jews. We are all brothers. It is not about being Jews, Christians, or Muslims. We are all in the same boat." This is a simple thought, but it's key. War is unbearable. We have to do as much as we can so that peace may be always possible, because, as Batili used to say, a simple but bold and wise man, we are all in the same boat. Thank you for being here.
departed for this beautiful moment of interruption. E adesso, prima di riprendere I nostri...
And before going back to our works, I would like to welcome all of you very warmly, all of you who are here in the venue, plus the 1,000+ people outside and all of those who are connected with us through broadcasting channels. And now we will listen to the message sent by the President of the Republic of Italy, Sergio Mattarella, read out by Professor Marco Impagliazzo, President of the Community of Sant'Egidio.
Dear President, I wish to address my heartfelt greeting and my most wholehearted encouragement to the organizers and all the participants of the international meeting in Tirana, the most recent stop of the fruitful work of the Community of Sant'Egidio, which it has carried out for almost 30 years at an international level. The themes selected and the authoritativeness of the speakers, who come from all over the world, confirm your intent to give life and energy to the spirit of Assisi, summoning institutions as well as peoples and communities to become true protagonists in the construction of peace. Winds of war are stirring in many parts of the world, generating violence, death, and fear. No one in the era of globalization can opt out and feel secure. The flames of war are licking our borders, generating misery, devastation, and waves of refugees who knock on the doors of Western countries, hoping to find salvation and rights. Democratic nations cannot respond by closing up and entrenching themselves. Walls and barbed wires. Walls and barbed wires will not stop the fire from bursting into flames. The solution is to steer global processes, and in order to do so, a clever, far-sighted, and brave political action is needed that may bring together dialogue, development, integration, and security for the citizens. As you well know, and have put in practice for decades, religions can offer a very important contribution to help people lift up their eyes, to mobilize hearts and souls, to overcome indifference. Pope Francis has recently reaffirmed that it is a sacrilege to kill in the name of God. The great world religions have a special responsibility in promoting dialogue and understanding. Authentically religious men and women embody the ideals of peace, respect, collaboration, rejection of violence, charity, and love. Religious freedom, threatened in many parts of the world, is one of the fundamental rights of human beings and democracies. Dialogue is a complex and patient effort, but mutual knowledge mitigates distrust, and friendship and respect uproot intolerance. We need to fight against and isolate those who preach hatred, people who exploit religious faith, whether their own or someone else's, to spread violence and terror. Through tangible and effective action, we need to oppose whoever fuels the idea that the clash of civilizations is unavoidable. The only civilization we accept, which we persistently endeavor for, is the civilization of peace, of encounter, of collaboration, of fundamental human rights, of the reduction of inequality. It is not an easy path, but it is the only one that is granted in order to attain authentic peace without losing, or worse, betraying, our values. When selfishness and demagogy prevail, Europe and the entire West are weaker, and their voice becomes less effective in the world. I am certain that the seeds you will sow in these days in Tirana will bear good fruits. I therefore renew my best wishes to you for the full success of your important initiative. Sergio Mattarella.
And now I want to give the floor to the Honorable Andrea Orlando, Minister of Justice of the Italian government. We are aware of the bond between Italy and Albania, and his presence is one we appreciate very much. Through you, we can listen to the voice of a politician, but also of a secular scholar of human sciences. Mr. President of the Republic, heads of delegations, civil and religious authorities, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor, and I am pleased to greet you on behalf of the Italian government in this 28th International Meeting, Peace is Always Possible, promoted by the Community of Sant'Egidio in cooperation with the Orthodox Church of Albania, the Albanian Bishops' Conference, and with the active support of the Albanian government, whom I wish to thank. I also wish to thank the organizers, of course, especially our friends from the Community of Sant'Egidio, who contribute in keeping the spirit of Assisi alive through dialogue and through understanding between different religious faiths. We are aware of the special meaning. We are aware of the special strength in this place and time, the strength of this dream of peace. In this place, especially from the symbolic point of view, which isn't something random. Through having this meeting, this dialogue in Tirana between different cultures and religions, Albania, the majority of its population belongs to the Islamic religion, has left behind political doctrines and ideologies which were an obstacle to religious freedom, doctrines which were a wound to the conscience of all of mankind. And in recent years, Albania has been able to consolidate a model of harmony between faiths based on dialogue and tolerance. All the more important because, as Andrea Riccardi mentioned, we no longer have homogeneous societies. We no longer have nations which speak a single language and with a single faith. We cannot forget the suffering and the persecution suffered by all of the religious communities in the dark years of dictatorship. The Albanian experience brings to mind the view of Pope Francis, which was mentioned in the title of this international meeting, Peace is Always Possible. And as Edi Rama said, for politics, peace is the only way forward. We can no longer tolerate the use of war. We can no longer tolerate the idea of conflict and violence between peoples. The Italian Constitution states amongst its fundamental principles the refusal of war as an offense to the freedom of other people and as a way of solving international controversies. But it also shows the way through which we can build peace and justice between nations, through the promotion of the actions of international organizations aimed at this. Around these words, the spirit of believers and non-believers were gathered, and how important the religious experience was in writing these words. And these words today give us a major burden, one reminded by many of the speakers in previous interventions. We cannot give up. We need to make a step forward. We need to turn all of our words and our hopes into actions, into tangible things. A peace that you are feeding today. This is what we are committed to. This is what we put our effort into. From the borders of Europe and the Balkan regions, new challenges lie ahead, such as that of managing migration, a phenomenon which the European Union needs to deal with, one which questions the reason of existence of the European Union itself. its ability to avoid betraying the very reasons through which it was born, its ability to deal with complex phenomena which characterize it through policies based on the criteria of solidarity and fairness. Because, as was mentioned, no peace can be possible without moving beyond injustices which are unacceptable in this globalized world. In a world in which the defense and the promotion of peace is multifaceted, as proven by the very complex agenda of this event, with three very intense days of debate, from religion to the defense of the environment and to the promotion of sustainable growth. And in this context, I think it's important to underscore another element. I think it's important to look at the global dimension, but perhaps we would have less problems if this global dimension were based on good neighboring policies between neighboring countries. And from this point of view, I want to underline the relationship which over time we have built between Italy and Albania. And from the bilateral standpoint, especially, we are involved in issues concerning justice and the rule of law, the struggle against corruption. These are priorities to move Albania towards adhesion to the European Union, something that Italy has always been a strong supporter of. I also wish to underscore the presence and the activities of NGOs such as the Community of Sant'Egidio and other organizations from the Italian Catholic scene who do a great deal from the humanitarian and social point of view here in Albania. And therefore, I hope that also through this meeting we can all be even more committed, authorities, religious communities, and civil societies, as a way of promoting peace and cooperation between people in the name of the mutual respect for the dignity of the human person, regardless of one's religion, and for the safeguarding of the environment. In our continent, a continent which often loses hope, I feel that this dialogue of yours becomes increasingly important in an era in which walls are being built again. And then we also have surprises which open new doors. While we go back to speculating on pain, we also have examples of humanity, of those who are able to greet others. I'd like to go back to the events that Andrea Riccardi was mentioning earlier. History can surprise us, but these surprises must be prepared. All the more so in a time filled with contradictions. And your ability to strengthen the prophecy of peace can become a priceless value, both for believers and for non-believers. Thank you.
Dear friends, our reflection on our commitment to peace is obviously connected to the tense and dramatic situation in the Middle East these days. The presence of His Beatitude, the Patriarch of Babylonia of the Chaldeans, Louis Raphael I Sacco, is very significant, as he reminds us the suffering Christians in Syria and Iraq. In this very difficult situation, he even enforced his commitment to the interreligious dialogue and to the comeback of the peaceful living together in Iraq. I warmly welcome you in our midst, Beatitude.
Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks, first of all, to the Community of Sant'Egidio for the strong interest it shows vis-à-vis the religious and ethnic minorities in the Middle East. Thank you for your solidarity with the Christians in our troubled nations. I would like to thank very much the Prime Minister and Professor Andrea Riccardi for your solidarity towards my people. I believe that peace is always possible. Man created by God deserves to live in dignity and happiness. Violence is against God's plan and against human nature. We must make all efforts to save such dignity. Democracy, freedom, human rights are not just words or slogans, but aims, projects to be achieved. It is the mission of us all. It is a need, a requirement for each of us. Sadly, the act of producing weapons equates to fostering wars and, as a consequence, death and destruction. Violence, which is ravaging Iraq, Syria, and the Middle East, is a shock for us. It is a shock for our countries, but also it is a trauma for the entire world. Humankind cannot just be a spectator, sit and see what happens. Communitarism, with its tribal consequences, is the breeding ground of jihadist ideology. It would have never gained ground, however, without those visible and invisible walls that divide our nations according to religion, language, ethnic group, and one could add corruption, injustice, unemployment, poverty. Without all this, jihadi ideology would never gain ground. And this is why a true, all-encompassing citizenship in the Middle East embodied in politics may be the ideal situation, the solution, and we could draw from the Albanian model to achieve such aims. Albania had to undergo a long journey. However, today it has turned into a country of peaceful coexistence and shared liberties. In Iraq, since 2003, we count the dead, without mentioning the 3 million refugees and the destruction of infrastructure. Syria, Yemen, and Libya too. And the exodus provoked by migration are also a case in point. So I ask myself, in the name of what and of whom all this occurs? So to achieve a just and sustainable shared solution, I propose first a citizenship embodied in politics, to put an end to the jihadist ideology and to its brutality. We need to achieve a political reconciliation in Iraq, Syria, and in the Middle Eastern countries based on citizenship. Peace actually involves a constitutional reform in order to include all the components of the civil society out of a tribal or sectarian mindset. For this reason, it is necessary that all citizens are made equal and discriminations within the community end. Especially in public administration, they should be forbidden. Only personal skills should be taken into account. This is the only way our country shall remain united. This practical citizenship would imply separation between religion and state, like here in Albania, but also in Indonesia, which is largely at large a Muslim country. In order to live together, it is necessary to bring about justice. Today, the jihadist ideology is propagated by armed people who are destabilizing the entire region. This is why an international initiative should be carried out to promote stability in our countries. The second point I would like to make relates to, I would title it, Towards a Charter of Educational Religious Textbooks. The present situation in our destroyed countries with our dead and displaced citizens, this situation should stir up awareness in order to build peace for tomorrow. A charter for educational religious textbooks would be necessary. These textbooks could foster an open attitude and be accepted and used across the board. And the religious education textbooks should consider in a positive way other religions with a respectful attitude. The present educational programs, unfortunately, include extremist ideas which refuse other religions also in writing. So religion has to be a source of hope and contribute to development and the stability of the society. It cannot spread hatred and divide, which unfortunately occurs when it is instrumentalized by communitarist and sectarian interests, vested interests. The third proposal relates to citizenship, also in the case of humanitarian situation. Millions of people live in inhuman conditions. And imagine 120,000 Christians in Nineveh. Plain had to leave their villages and their homes without anything. They had to go out from their homes undressed. Those Christians are worried about the future of their families and of their children. International relief is urgent for displaced families who do not live anymore in their homes and live under tents in camps, and they need dignified dwellings and food, medicines and clothing and schools and relief. These families need jobs in order to work and to restore confidence in themselves, and this is what will enable them to go back home once that we hope their religion will be granted freedom to exist. Commitment means hope, equals to hope. Happily, in the midst of this humanitarian crisis, some people showed feelings in practice that a shared citizenship is possible. I am now thinking of those Muslims which came to aid of the refugee Christians. I'm thinking of those Sunnis who saved people from the Shia group, and vice versa. I think to the Kurds who welcome many refugees, millions of refugees of all religions in Kurdistan. And my mind now goes to that old Muslim man who came to visit me, and he told me, take here $5,000. These are to help the displaced Christians, because I am thankful for having received education in a school of nuns when I was a kid. These men and these women are the future and the hope of the Middle East. Christians and Muslims, Jews and others together have to commit to prepare a better future for all in the Middle East. We should never define ourselves by ethnic or religious factors. Thank you very much.
We will now listen to another authoritative Christian voice that we have the honor to welcome in our midst today. His Beatitude Anastasios, Archbishop of Tirana and Primate of the Autocephalous Orthodox Church of Albania. He is one of the most important leaders of the Orthodox Church and the European with a great culture. He dedicated his whole life to the resurrection of the Church in Albania, and some of us have been able this morning to contemplate this resurrection in the splendid new Orthodox Cathedral of Tirana. Beatitude, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed for the kind words. Your Excellencies, Mr. President of Albania and Mr. President of Montenegro, Beatitude, Eminences, beloved brothers and leaders of various Christian churches and other world religions, ministers, deputies, I think that it is more simple to say beloved brothers and sisters. The most tragic violence today is the misuse of the term peace by people that they don't believe in this. Nevertheless, the human longing for worldwide peace, for peaceful coexistence, remains permanent. Therefore, every effort of renewing the interest of peace and the deepening of this meaning is valuable contribution in the course of humanity. Our conference, glory to God, belongs to the category. It is a particular joy and honor for the Orthodox Autocephalous Church of Albania to be also a co-organizer of this international meeting for peace, together with the Community of Sant'Egidio and the Episcopal Conference of Albania. Before any other comment, we would like to express our heartfelt thanks to all of you, the distinguished participants, that you accepted our invitation to come here. May the peace of God, which always passes all understanding, fill everyone's life and maybe also illuminate our souls and mind during the deliberations of this conference. Albania, as it is well known, and it was repeated during these previous lectures, faced many serious trials during the course of the 20th century. Most notably, a long-lasting atheistic persecution. But since 1991, however, it has embraced religious freedom and fosters peaceful coexistence between religious communities and also with those who they don't believe and they don't follow any religion. The painful memories from the two world wars and the bloody conflicts at the end of the 2nd century to the Western Balkans contributed increasing the desire for peace in all its forms. The title of the topic of our conference, Peace is Always Possible, seems dynamic and optimistic. The news, however, which continuously transmitted lately by all forms of media, with its savage conflicts taking place in various parts of the planet, cast a heavy shadow over the optimism for the possibility of a world peace. This adding to the formulation of our topic, there is a question mark posed at the end. Is always peace possible? Within this uncertain reality, the proceedings of the International Meeting for Peace, Religious and Culture in Dialogue will certainly result and will help a hopeful search, offering a creative proposals for the critical issues of peace. As a short introduction, I would like to briefly stress 5 points. First, for what appears impossible to become possible, namely the prevalence of world peace, religious communities play a central role. According to the aims that their followers draw from the religious convictions, they can support or undermine peace at local or global level. Therefore, it is a necessity for peace to become a reality and possible, a peace between religions. The issue of peace between religions and dialogue is very complex, and we are not advocating a type of syncretism. The true respect for the religion's freedom of every human person, for each or her human dignity, remains the solid foundation for peaceful coexistence. There are important elements and peaceful inspirations in the doctrinal layers of the greatest religion that must be clearly discovered, utilized, and made productive in order for a worldwide peace to be possible. The voices for peace which come from the lungs of the global religions must be intensified and persistently manifested by sermons, catechism, lectures, and with all sorts of communications. All the initiatives for dialogue between religion and cultures will surely help to arrive to this aim. We are grateful to all those struggling for this goal, particularly for the community of the Sant'Egidio for its systematic and inspired efforts during recent decades. Second, religious conscience in its various forms has the capability to contribute in different ways to the development of peaceful tendencies and more generally fostering of peace at local and global level. In the majority of religious traditions we find, first, a search for inner peace. Second, we assert the curbing of aggression. The third common characteristic is the pursuit of peaceful relations with the highest reality, understand either as an impersonal or a personal God. Fourth, principles are re-established by the religion to facilitate peaceful cohabitation with each particular social group. And finally, efforts extend towards the maintenance of peace beyond the particular religious communities to all humanity. The obligation falls to those of us who believe in God to advance to ironic, peaceful theology and anthropology drawn from the depth sources of our religious doctrines and the best pages of the history of our religious traditions, by emphasizing each person's duty to oppose violence and to work towards reconciliation and lasting peace on earth. The new generation, in particular, needs a conscious education for peace that will be nourished and inspired by religious sources. The third point, research for peace presupposes a constant defense and struggle for justice. I shall give a little justice to myself to drink a little water. Then, always throughout the span of the century, especially during our age, the relationship that peace has with justice is emphasized. In many religious traditions, this bond is nourished, is undermined. Sincere yearning for peace at both the local and the global level means a true desire and struggling for justice. An unjust world cannot be peaceful. Today, peace and justice have also acquired another synonym, development. And all of us can and must contribute to the development of the poorest areas. Poverty means the worst type of violence. When people near or far from us are deprived of the basic needs for their own survival, it is not strange that they turn to other directions and adopt extreme religious beliefs in order to achieve a just society as they think and to discover a meaning of life and death as they think. More specifically, to the problem of terrorism, which has recently dominated. We believe that the Western societies who have economic, scientific, and military power ought to proceed to a creative self-critique. They should see their responsibility more clearly and their depth to the new global dimension. Peace, safety will be nurtured with the care for social justice and the development of poorest societies. It would be tragic, spiritually and politically, because of indifference or arrogance, to allow a new, multiform proletariat to develop with different ideas through the abuse of the spiritual, economic difficulties and using the spiritual, religious, atomic energy of a concrete religious tradition. Point 4. Something that is often ignored is that religious conscience is compelled to stress that peace begins from within, in the depth of the human existence. It is related with humility, forgiveness, freedom from hatred, from bitterness, and from jealousy. It flourishes in constant communion with the God of peace. In particular, the Christian meaning of inner peace is deeper than and broader than the apathy of the Stoics. It is not restricted to impassivity for what happens around us. Keeping our inner peace, we shall be able to live with others, if possible, so far as it is dependent of us, peacefully with all. 5. At final analysis, the opposite of peace is not war, but egocentrism. Individual collective, ethnic, racial. Egocentrism mobilizes the various forms of violence which kills peace in various ways. This is the inspiration and this is the instigation of both large and small conflicts. This is what bombards human persons and communities continuously with hatred. The antidote to egoism does not consist of general ethical advices nor abstract legislations and mechanical suppression, but by the strengthening of love, a multidimensional, unselfish love, which is limited only by self-offering. It is not limited by prejudice, and they are not any other distinction. The enormous possibilities and contribution of a healthy religious conscience is located here. This, even in conditions of long-lasting conflicts, guarantees the power for forgiveness and reconciliation. We know clearly in the Christian tradition that was love is God, and those who remain in love remains in God and God in them. The power of love finally prevails over the love for power, which destroys peace. Beloved brothers and sisters, excuse me that I am a little tired this evening, but I would like to thank you for your patience, and I hope that and pray that through the presentation, the discussions, and the general deliberations during this international meeting for peace, we will find invaluable material for understanding more deep and making a better analysis of the critical topic of our conference, which is to propose, and it is to understand this essential truth that peace is always possible, even in many difficulties. Thank you.
Now we are glad to listen to the Jewish contribution to this panel through Rabbi David Rosen from Jerusalem. He is an old but always young friend of our meetings and a faithful builder of the spirit of Assisi that brought us here today. We are happy to welcome you in our midst.
Thank you, Dame Hilda, Madam Chair, Morai Rabotai, your Beatitudes, Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It is a great honor to be in this land and city of tolerance and coexistence, and to share this illustrious podium, for which I am grateful to the Community of Sant'Egidio. Perhaps today, more than ever before, we can see how religion can be a blessing and how it can also be a curse. How religion can be the inspiration for the greatest efforts at promoting the well-being of humanity, and how it can be a tool of violence and hatred. Indeed, divisions today are far less between religions than within religions. Between those on the one hand who exploit religion for adversarial purpose, and those on the other who are inspired by their respective religious heritages to reach out to others in friendship and respect, both within and beyond their own communities. Although we see today more than ever before most terrible atrocities performed in the name of religion, those of us involved in interreligious engagement can witness to the fact that never before in the history of humankind has there been so much communication, collaboration, cooperation between people of different religious backgrounds for the benefit of society at large, precisely for that peace that still eludes us. And this gathering this evening testifies to this spirit. For the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim traditions, the prototype of this ideal, of the peace-loving moral man of faith, is Abraham, alav shalom, Ibrahim alayhi salam. In the Hebrew calendar, we will celebrate the new year next week, the beginning of our high holy days, and we will read from the book of Genesis of Abraham's willingness to sacrifice that which was even more dear than life itself for him, for his love of God. This period culminates with the holiest day of the Jewish year, the Day of Atonement, which this year coincides with the Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha, when Muslims commemorate that same sacrificial devotion of Abraham, of Ibrahim. This coincidence affirms our common brotherhood and universal obligations as the children of Abraham towards all our brothers and sisters in humanity. Accordingly, Abraham is referred to in our traditions as the friend of God, El Khalil, or more precisely in the words of the prophet Isaiah in chapter 41, Abraham who loves me, Abraham the lover of God. This is not just because of Abraham's faith, but because he embodies the authentic moral conduct of the man of faith. As Genesis 18:19 puts it, quote, he instructs his household and his children after him to observe the way of the Lord, which is to do righteousness and justice. Above all, what Abraham represents in our tradition is the essential prerequisite for true peace, the spirit of hospitality. Genesis 18 opens describing Abraham as sitting at the entry of his tent by the heat of the day, looking out for wayfarers to offer hospitality, when, quote, he lifts up his eyes and sees, and behold, 3 men standing before him. Abraham subsequently discovers that they are divine messengers, angels, come to inform him of the divine blessing of progeny. 2 of these messengers go on to Sodom to warn the city of its pending destruction and to save Lot and his family. And the next chapter of Genesis begins with the words, and the 2 angels came to Sodom. A Hasidic master asked, why are they referred to as just men regarding Abraham, but when they go to Sodom, they are described as angels? Why are they not referred to as angels in relation to Abraham? And he answers that this was because there was no need for the angels to reveal themselves as such to Abraham. For Abraham saw the angel in every human person, each and every one created in the divine image. Hospitality expresses a reaching out by which we initiate a welcome to the other, all created in the divine image. This, of course, includes being able to respond to the pain and the pleas for justice and security of the other. Above all, however, it means respecting his or her human dignity. Reaching out as people of faith in the name of our respective traditions is especially important, for it is thereby that we can overcome the mutual alienation that bedevils us and be true to the values and example of Abraham, our common father. This idea, this value was embodied by the papal initiatives in Assisi. And the community of Sant'Egidio is not only the bearer of the torch of the spirit of Assisi, it is the embodiment of the religious striving for peace through its work with the vulnerable and the needy, the stranger and the wayfarer, through the spirit of hospitality which is expressed in these annual meetings, not just physical hospitality, but above all the psycho-spiritual hospitality of acceptance and respect. Not to mention the community's work for reconciliation and peace in international relations. It thus serves us all as inspiration to follow these divine paths of peace that are not only possible, but are precisely the sublime goal and telos of our faith traditions. In the beautiful words of Saint John Paul II, quote, "We Christians, Jews, and Muslims, as the children of Abraham, are called to be a blessing to the world. In order to be such, we must first be a blessing to one another. Indeed, may we succeed in being a blessing of peace to one another and a blessing of peace to our whole world." Thank you.
Now we proceed with the contribution from the Islamic religion with the voice of the Secretary General Al-Din Afifi Muhi of the Al-Sharif Islamic Research Academy of Al-Azhar in Egypt. With great joy, we remember the meeting of last May in Florence with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, El-Tayeb, on the difficult but necessary dialogue between the East and the West. The floor is yours.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
In the name of Allah, the Merciful. Distinguished audience, distinguished authorities, ministers, religious leaders, intellectuals, ladies and gentlemen, I want to greet you with the words of Islam. May the peace, the mercy, and the blessing of God be with you. I'd like to greet you on behalf of the great Imam, the Sheikh of Al-Azhar, Ahmad Al-Tayeb. I wish you all the best for this very important meeting in such a complicated era, which requires solidarity from all of us, solidarity to promote peace. Al-Azhar Sharif wishes to show solidarity to all religious institutions, to all religious confessions and all schools of thought as a way of promoting peace. I want to express my deepest gratitude to the community of Sant'Egidio for these initiatives, for these worthy initiatives which continue along the history of your community to commit to promote peace and the humanity of mankind. Here we are in this international meeting titled, "Peace is Always Possible." We who live in one of the darkest moments in the history of mankind, given the dissemination of wars, its death tolls, its bloodshed, victims of tragedies, men, women, and children, millions of refugees who no longer have a roof over their heads, with countries who have closed their borders to protect their countries from refugees. In light or in the shadow of this tragedy, which has filled the air with the smell of blood, it has become of the utmost importance to find solutions, and practical ones at that, to these disasters, because war, as we all know, is the mother of poverty, illness, and ignorance. We have to save the victims from their misery. We have to focus on the humanitarian side of things. We have to disseminate the values of brotherhood, compassion, and mutual help. There's no doubt whatsoever that dialogue has become all the more important. Dialogue has become a true need of our century, not simply on the individual level, not simply on the community level, but also on the level of relations between peoples. Given the extreme importance of mutual understanding between people, despite the differences, Islam has promoted a dialogue between religions, given their deep and profound influence on souls. Islam has developed a model of dialogue based on respecting one another. Religion has a deep impact on souls, and therefore dialogue can only be successful through tolerance between those who take part in the dialogue, by eliminating all forms of extremism between the people of faith of the various religions. And that's why the Islamic position in all religious dialogues is characterized by an openness towards the other, with the utmost tolerance to the very extreme. And from the very beginning, Islam has placed religious and cultural and intellectual pluralism at the core of its activities. And this pluralism has become one of the main traits of Islamic teachings. In reality, the topic of dialogue in the world we live in is a true need as a way of overcoming the number of problems that exist on all levels. I'd like to take this opportunity to reiterate the fact that Al-Azhar Sharif, with the leadership of the great Imam, wants to promote dialogue. And by participating in the meeting in Florence to promote the dialogue between civilizations last June, was a further contribution and a further recognition and an attempt to deepen the roots of dialogue as a way of achieving peace between religions and peoples. Dialogue is something that we have a real need for as a way of dealing with relationships between civilians, and all the more so between religions. Between religions have an undeniable influence in the lives of men, both on the individual and on the community level. That's why Hans Küng, the great German theologian, stated that there will not be peace between nations until we won't have peace between religions, until we won't have a dialogue between religions, until we won't have a dialogue between these religions. We live in a time in which the world has shrunk. It is no longer possible to close in on ourselves. Our world has become a global village. Dialogue is the way to reach our goal. Dialogue is the way to allow mankind to go towards peace. The future of mankind as a whole is connected to the creation of a structured system to promote the mutual understanding between people. Religions are capable of changing the behavior of men. And a great deal has been said in a number of different contexts and international fora. A great deal of things have been said as far as human rights are concerned, so much so that we now imagine that human rights have never been respected in the past. All this talk of human rights only means that contemporary man no longer has conscience of these rights, and therefore man remembers these rights repetitively by repeating them constantly over time. These rights are rewritten and redrafted in treaties because they no longer exist. Maybe what we don't understand, maybe what we aren't able to grasp, is that these rights, drafted in so many constitutions, are rights that God has written in the hearts of mankind, rights that have been recognized by ancient civilizations, rights enshrined in their texts and their codes. The conscience of these rights, the awareness of these rights, was something practical and factual. Those who read of these ancient laws understand that mankind in ancient times understood rights and duties towards other human beings. And this awareness, this conscience, which was revealed by the heavenly religions, especially the three monotheistic ones, are rights which are the fundamental human rights of man. And Islam repeats to its believers that we must respect these rights as a way of fulfilling the humanity of man. In the West, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Voltaire, and Montesquieu played a very important role in giving Europe awareness as far as human rights were concerned, beginning with the right to equality, brotherhood, justice, and so on. This awareness developed up to the drafting of international treaties. But the practical application of these rights, especially in the world we live in this day and age, prove that this was a theoretical debate, whereas our actions are completely different. Our actions between men are completely different. The wealthy nations are able to use their wealth and they safeguard human rights. And this is a dream which many human beings aspire to, especially in the third world. For many people in the third world, it is a dream to be able to reach countries which promote rights and equality. Yet this dream has collapsed due to the indifference of the West towards the fate of people in the third world who experience war and terrorism. Human rights have been violated. The human rights, as enshrined by international treaties, have been violated. And the world has been witnessing these violences through TV screens in Syria, and Libya, and Iraq, and Yemen. Violence which has brought about killings and millions of refugees who are knocking on doors to ask for a safe haven. And what are the people in other parts of the world doing? They raise their voices. They condemn these aggressors. And what do we do? What do we, who convey the word of God, do? We have to rip off this mask and say loud and clear that there is a contradiction between the things we say and the things we do. Ever since the beginning of civilization, we have always said that justice is at the roots of power. Justice lies at the root of society, a society which wants to be human, in which all of our rights are respected, in which no one attacks anybody else. Yet this theoretical vision of justice, through the safeguarding of human rights, is something we have to ask ourselves whether or not we are achieving this justice. There is a real gap between those who have to enforce justice in the international community. They are the ones who are violating these rights. They are the ones who interpret these treaties based on their needs, based on their desires, and based on their interests, the interests that they themselves have and that their allies have. When the law, which needs to promote justice, becomes a tool in the hands of the powerful, at that point justice is meaningless. At that point, violence will turn into justice, and justice and injustice will become the same thing, and that's what we're seeing in a number of different international contexts. Seeing a child in Iraq, in Syria, Palestine, or in Yemen, a child begging for help, while he is being shot at, or when planes shoot missiles, the image of that child alone should be enough to awaken the world's conscience. The issue of illegal immigration creates egoism in the north towards the south. It is not merciful to leave the people south of the Sahara to continue to be the victims of ignorance, poverty, disease. If the north of the world were sincere, if the north of the world were objective, it would have helped the poor people to solve their problems, and we would never have seen these violent and tragic images. We would never have seen so many people dying, drowning as they cross seas. We heard of this accident in front of the Libyan coasts. These are things which happen on a weekly basis. We are seeing boats sinking in the Mediterranean Sea. We're seeing people who are the victims of international traffickers, who become the victims and the prey of criminal organizations, who use them as tools. These are criminal communities who use these youngsters to kill. Terrorism makes no difference between one society and the other. And focusing on security and on protecting borders at the expense of the poor and immigrants is something which calls for justice within the international community. Speaking of peace requires a realistic and practical approach in terms of solving the problems faced by the disenfranchised people. How can we face the genocide suffered by the people in the third world and in countries south of the Mediterranean? How can we tolerate the death of children? What can we say when looking at the image of that Syrian child washed ashore in Turkey? This is our tragedy. This is a tragedy which requires a humane response, a humanitarian response, one based on solidarity between people, so that we can truly promote peace. And may the peace and mercy of Allah be upon you all.
Dear friends, last but not least, we will now have a contribution from Asia with the voice of Mr. Kulkarni from India. Sudhindra Kulkarni is the president of the Research Hindu Foundation of Mumbai. He is a most influential intellectual in this beautiful, colored and complex country which is India. As a writer and a poet, he helps us to discover the beauty of living together.
Professor Andrea Riccardi, Ms. Kaiboon, distinguished representatives of various faiths and countries on the dais, esteemed participants in this conference, sisters and brothers. It's an honor for me to be representing the Hindu faith in this inaugural session of the Interfaith Conference in Tirana. I sincerely thank the Community of Sant'Egidio for this invitation. I come from India, the land of the Buddha, the land of great Sufi saints, the land of Mahatma Gandhi, and the land of Mother Teresa. I bring special and warm greetings from the people to the people of Albania, the birthplace of Mother Teresa. My faith is Hinduism. The Vedas and Upanishads, which are the ancient sacred texts of Hinduism, teach us that the entire world is one family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, as we say in Sanskrit. My country and my religion respect, accept, and celebrate the diversity of faiths. Nonviolence, love, care, compassion, cooperation and sacrifice, respect for diversity, promotion of harmony through diversity, equal value for every human life, and the essential oneness of mankind. These are commandments of God's law, as articulated and taught to us by the prophets, saints, and sages from all faiths, from all over the country, all over the world. Sisters and brothers, unfortunately, the various faith communities in India have not always remained faithful to the fundamental ideals and values of our civilization. The Indian subcontinent has suffered many tragedies in the past and is witnessing some tragedies at present too. Some of us in India have been making strenuous efforts aimed at harmonization of relations among Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and other faiths. We have also been engaged in efforts aimed at normalization of relations among India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and other countries in the so-called family of SAARC, that is, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. In terms of population, the South Asian subcontinent is the largest in the world, united by a diverse and yet common civilization. It is home to nearly 1.7 billion people. We are also working towards peaceful, friendly, and cooperative relations between India and our northern neighbor, China. By transforming itself into a zone of peace and progress for all, India and the rest of South Asia can make a huge contribution to a positive transformation of the entire world in the 21st century. In this difficult yet necessary effort, we would like to seek the cooperation of the Community of Sant'Egidio and other such organizations dedicated to interfaith dialogue and conflict resolution. Esteemed participants in this conference, many of us had assembled in Antwerp last year. The interfaith meet in 2014 was special. It marked the 100 years of the beginning of the First World War. Our declaration last year had stated that mankind must never again witness what the 20th century witnessed in the form of two horrific world wars. How does the world look like now in 2015? Sadly, the international community has not learned the right lessons from the past. Kuratulain Haidar, a renowned literary figure from India, once wrote, quote, "History is the name of mankind's endless inability to learn lessons from the past," unquote. History is the name of mankind's endless inability to learn lessons from the past. These words sound hauntingly true when we look at the deadly civil wars taking place in 4 Middle Eastern countries, Syria, Iraq, Libya, Yemen. The effects of these wars are not limited to the countries ravaged by conflict. The influx of migrants and refugees into Europe could produce the worst humanitarian crisis since the end of the 2 world wars. But this is not the only crisis. ISIS, which threatens to create an Islamic state all over the world, is committing a genocide on Christians, other minorities, and also on Muslims themselves. ISIS is committing a cultural archaeological genocide by brutally destroying the priceless and irreplaceable heritage of the Middle East. Our conference must lend its voice to the global outcry for an immediate end to the civil wars and all of the conflicts in the region. I would also like to emphasize that the Muslim religious leaders around the world should become more united, more vocal, and more active in condemning and countering acts of extremism and terrorism being perpetrated in the name of Islam. I should mention here one such courageous and commendable effort. Dr. Muhammad Tahirul Qadri, a renowned Islamic scholar from Pakistan, has recently launched an Islamic curriculum for peace and counter-terrorism. 5 years ago, he had published a comprehensive fatwa against terrorism and suicide bombings. I have been working very closely with Dr. Tahirul Qadri and his followers in India and Pakistan in spreading the true understanding about Islam as a religion of peace. Dear friends, there is yet another genocide going on in our world, and it is not limited to ISIS or to the Middle East. It is the invisible genocidal violence that man is inflicting on Mother Nature in the reckless pursuit of dogma of limitless economic growth and material prosperity. The dumb victims of this genocide animals, plants, microorganisms, cannot become migrants and refugees like the Syrian refugees. Their plight does not become breaking news on the global media. Nevertheless, Mother Nature is reminding us that man has to pay the price for his violent behavior in a misplaced notion of development and economic growth. And mankind is indeed paying the price in so many ways. Global warming, unpredictable changes in climate, natural disasters, etc. Why is man's violence against Mother Nature boomeranging on him? Because the current paradigm of economic growth in almost all countries around the world runs counter to the warning sounded by Mahatma Gandhi, who said, I quote, "Mother Nature has enough to satisfy every human being's need, but not everyone's greed," unquote. We must realize that the universe Friends, we must realize that the universe came into existence 14 billion years ago. Our planet Earth came into being 4.5 billion years ago. The modern form of our species, Homo sapiens, emerged only 200,000 years ago. And the modern industrial civilization is a mere 200 to 300 years old. Yet, in this short period, our so-called modern industrial civilization has managed to destroy many of the life forms and much of the biodiversity built up over the entire lifespan of the universe. Truly, this is suicidal folly. And the entire world community, friends, should be grateful to His Holiness Pope Francis for warning us about this folly. The Pope issued a comprehensive encyclical on climate change in May this year. Through this encyclical, which is instructively titled On Care for Our Common Home, the Pope has appealed to the collective conscience of the global economic and political elite to integrate questions of justice in debates on the environment, so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. Cry of the earth and cry of the poor, the two are interrelated. By cautioning us against the clear and present danger of violence and mutual destruction, and by making a compelling case for a pro-poor and low-carbon reorientation of the global economy, His Holiness the Pope has set the agenda for the crucial United Nations Climate Change Conference to be held in Paris in December this year. Our meeting here in Tirana should strongly endorse the Pope's encyclical and urge world leaders to reach a new agreement aimed at stopping and reversing ecological destruction. I would like to mention here that in November, just 2 months from now, some of us in India will organize an interfaith conference on the Pope's encyclical ahead of the UN conference in Paris. I suggest that the Tirana meeting should call for similar interfaith declarations on climate change to be issued from around the world. Sisters and brothers, what is the root of all the problems, conflicts, and crises that we see around the world in the past and also at present? Why is it that the virus of violence is refusing to go away? Why is it that this virus of violence is proving to be immune to any effort to neutralize it? The reason is obvious. The reason lies in the failure of individuals, institutions, organizations, communities, nations, and mankind as a whole to follow God's law. It is a law enacted and enforced by our Creator and conveyed to us by all our religions. Whenever mankind has heeded and acted as per the ethics of this divine law, it has made progress and reaped the rich fruits of peace. But mankind has invariably suffered whenever any section of it has violated this divine law and fallen prey to injustice, intolerance, bigotry, exclusivism, extremism, greed, selfishness, violent oppression of man by man, and violent exploitation of Mother Nature by man. Let us not forget that mankind has also suffered invariably whenever the existence of God has been denied and arrogant atheism made state policy. Albania, under the long communist dictatorship and self-imposed seclusion, is a sobering example. Therefore, all of us who have gathered here in Tirana should pledge once again to work towards a reawakening of mankind on the basis of the spiritual wisdom contained in all the religions and all the humanistic cultural traditions of the world. Let us pledge to work together more strongly, more sincerely than ever before for a world of peaceful coexistence. In doing so, let us heed the profound advice of Martin Luther King Jr., who said, I quote, "Those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war," unquote. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace on earth is possible. Peace in the universe is possible. For this, we must first have peace in our hearts, and we must have justice in our societies locally and globally. Thank you. And finally, a strong and heartfelt salute to you, the Community of Sant'Egidio.
A warm thank you to all our speakers for their ample contributions that make us reflect and that support our will to make peace in our time. I thank the audience for its attention and its interest. And I invite everyone to explore in depth the themes of your choice the coming days within the highly interesting program of roundtables which are open to the public. Let us use the opportunity of these days to renew and refresh our dream and commitment for a world in peace, because, really, peace is always possible. Thank you.
Refresh the dream.